Nigeria is struggling with severe cash shortages and riots erupting across the country amid a closely contested presidential election that has ruling party candidate Bola Tinubu commanding an early lead, according to Reuters. Two-thirds of the country have yet to declare results, but opposition parties are rejecting the outcome, claiming a rigged voting system. The New York Times reports that fights have broken out at polling stations and banks in the past week. Withdrawing cash to buy food or gas is impossible and cost prohibitive because newly designed banknotes are unavailable or attached to high fees. Nigerians were told to replace their old naira currency at banks ahead of the election to combat vote buying. And efforts to encourage use of the e-naira, Nigeria's central bank digital currency, have failed due to a lack of infrastructure, merchants, and interest. Joining us now to discuss is Eche Emole, co-founder of digital social network Afropolitan. Eche, thanks for joining us. You have stopped by the roadside in D.C. You're on your way to East Denver, but thanks for joining us to discuss Nigeria. So you were just there. Describe the mood in the country.
Honestly, thank you for having me. The emotions, the mood in the country is one of heightened emotions. I remember we had issues with even getting fuel or gas. So there are gas shortages. There was no cash. And, just dealing with those two factors really was irritating because you couldn't easily pay for goods and services. And on top of that, you couldn't also easily move around. So you had a situation where there were long gas queues, and then you'd be driving around the streets of Lagos and you'd see long lines for people lining up to get at the ATMs to withdraw money. I wasn't even able to use any sort of cash for the past month I was in Nigeria. And then you'd have issues with, the bank apps that you use for transfers not being able to handle the load or the increased load of more people using their apps, right? So it was a really frustrating time.
Now, from what I understand, there's a cash shortage because a new currency, a newly designed currency was introduced. They wanted, the incumbent government wanted Nigerians to cash in their e-naira currency, their old notes, into the banks. They did, but now they can't withdraw the new bank notes. So what is being done now? How are people getting by? And from what I understand, there are riots at ATM machines.
Yeah, so Nigeria doesn't have like an established welfare system like the US, right? So a lot of the times you'll have a situation where people are literally just giving some sort of petty cash to folks on the street. You can imagine a situation where that's no longer possible and the bank apps won't let you send as low as 500 naira or 1,000 naira on the app because it's not worth it. And so you now have a situation where there are people who are starving and there are people who are literally who've died as well because of this cash shortage. And it's just a terrible situation because then the CBN governor comes out and says, hey, we didn't even print enough naira, the printer is down, and it might take a couple of months to rev back up. And they were insisting on such a hard deadline when in a better policy, they could have spaced out the time for Nigerians to turn in the old naira and also allow it to be in circulation while, the new naira got launched in phases. But it's been a badly rolled out policy from top to bottom.
Now, Bitcoin is also frequently used in Nigeria, one of the most popular countries in Africa of Bitcoin use. Are people using Bitcoin at all?
Yeah, so I think the role Bitcoin places in emerging markets like Nigeria, it's primarily as a store of value, but also Nigerians are the most, I always tend to say like Nigerians are the ultimate outsiders in the global financial system. And so things like crypto was really built for emerging markets. I always say it's like a need to have in Africa versus maybe a nice to have in the West. So you have situations where Nigerians use crypto to be able to make payments for goods and services on a global scale because we're not really allowed primarily to tap into the global financial system as it exists today.
So in terms of how Bitcoin is being used, it's being used as a store of value, but also the status of Bitcoin is a little confusing because from what I understand, you're not allowed to transact with it in Nigeria?
Yeah, and I think that's what the CBN governor or government is also contending with, because the internet enables us today to opt out of systems that no longer serve us, even as citizens, right? So you have a situation where the CBN might have its own policy, but the citizens are saying, "Hey, even with your e-naira, we're not going to adopt it. We don't trust it, not only as a store of value, or just even primarily as a payment layer or currency layer." And that's why there's such a high adoption of crypto or Bitcoin in Africa, or specifically in Nigeria, because the citizens themselves are opting out of the particular government initiatives because they no longer have trust in the center.
Hmm. And in terms of the elections right now, are you, I suppose, do you feel disenfranchised with the voting system as it exists right now?
So I think one of the things, feedback I've even received off Twitter is Nigeria and a lot of countries in Africa, from a governance model, we probably need to embrace blockchain because it enables for more transparency and accountability. Because you have a situation today where people vote, but those results are not immediately transmitted on the ground. So then by the time they get to the collation centers, there's a chance for potential rigging, right? And that's been some of the evidence that's shown up on Twitter, where there's videos of election officials basically rigging the vote in favor of one particular candidate or the other, right? And so for us, we say to ourselves, like, what technology enables us to account for this level of corruption, but also to mitigate it, right? And I think blockchain in the future can help enable better governance mechanisms for a country like Nigeria.
So, Eche, you have years of experience building communities across the
Mhm.
African diaspora through events and
Yeah.
travel. You're on your way to Denver. What's the message that you hope to spread?
So I think that at Afropolitan, what we're basically arguing is that the nation state experiment has failed for Africans globally, and that we've never actually gotten to sit down and create a nation state known as a network state, which was popularized by Balaji through reflection and choice. And so, one of the things that we're looking to promote is really organize people around shared values at scale, because the internet enables us to do that today, right? And so, at Eat Denver, we're going to be coordinating with other Afropolitan citizens to attend some of the events, but also looking to draw more people into the network, because we're in phase one of our master plan, and that involves recruiting some of the best across the world, across multiple sectors. So we're looking forward to having a great time at Eat Denver.
All right. Well, folks, headed over to Denver. You know who to connect to if you want to get into Open Doors with Africa. Thank you so much, Eche, for joining us.
Thank you so
That was
much.
Afropolitan co-founder Eche Emole.